Hey everyone, Kukatsu here. Today we're going to take a look at this week's update, as well as some incoming balance changes for PSO2 NGS. For this week, it's mainly just a continuation of the seasonal event, so it's second half, so another LTQ, as well as an update to Z-Trey's shop. For her shop, there's just like more of those special scratch tickets for the Autumn 23, so 40 more of those, a new build part, Moongaze Holograph B, an accessory, Rappy Toy Glasses if you want that, and then the glide version of the cloud riding, or the little stink cloud that you can ride on. And then another vital gauge, the Halfana Wetlands, which is just looks like North Aleo, like that building up there, more star gems, and more special scratch tickets. For the rest of it, it's like more materials, like another set of them, but they just cost more. So like the Blizzardium, Infernium, and like Photon Scales. But there's also a second set of these augments, like the Defies inside, as well as like the Gigas 4s and Soul 4s. So I definitely want to like pick those up if you're like needing to upgrade more or just want to like sell them to other people in the player market. And then of course more Alpha Reactors just for some more raw Maceta. For the LTQ this week, it's just a truck trial, like a 24-man one that's in SEGA called the Caldera Cleanup Op. You need to be basically max level, so level 75, and need 34-13 battle power to be able to enter. And make sure that you're not in a beginner's block, otherwise you won't be able to enter this quest. For this, it's pretty simple. It's just 5 waves of enemies back to back where you're killing different bosses and Stia enemies. And at the very end is a Dolderis Vera Megalotics boss. And throughout the entire thing, there will be like these fire bombs that drop from the sky that you can also use on the enemies. It actually does pretty decent damage. Honestly, this whole quest is pretty easy with the 24 people, and the only hard part about it is getting those 24 in the first place. Queuing for this thing can take a while, like minutes at a time, maybe even like over 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It really just depends on when you're trying to queue for this, like during the time of day, and what ship that you are on. Just needing the 24 people just seems way too much for how the player base is right now, and because it's a seasonal event, it's a very low period in terms of the players wanting to play the game. So having a 24-man in the direct middle of this feels really bad. And unfortunately, with the rewards, with how long you're taking with the queue and how long it takes to do the quest, I just don't think it's really worth it when you stack it up against the other limited time quests that we just had. It's similar to what we had a few weeks ago, where there's like these Tassaz and the Octoarmor Belta, which have like no chance of dropping, pretty much. And then you get the Gold Prim too sometimes with the armor and swords. And there's like a ton of like other fodder, which doesn't really matter too much. I mean, there's like Alsinks that can drop in there, which is kind of nice. But everything else in there, you're pretty much just going to trash for the little bit of Maceta that you get out of them. The only good rewards is sometimes you get the LC capsules, but not every time. You do get arms refiners kind of decently. I got like an arms refiner almost every other run, or pretty much every run, so that's nice. But the 2s are a little bit more rare than the 1s, of course. And sometimes you can get the special scratch tickets, but it's also kind of rare, maybe like every 10 runs, 5 runs, I don't even know at this point. But you do get like 30,000 seasonal points every time you do this, so it's a little bit more than the previous ones, but not by too much. For me, it took about 3 or 4-ish minutes to queue into this to get the max amount of people, and that took about 8 minutes to complete the whole thing. So 12 minutes every time to do a run. I mean, sometimes the queue can be faster if I'm like in the rotation of the other people that are redoing it, but that just like is way too long in comparison to the other ones that we've had, which were like 5 minutes or 6 minutes, and they only took like, like 30 seconds to queue into, or even faster than that, because it was only like 8 people or 4 people. So this one, I would probably skip, at least trying to farm too much, unless if you wanted to do it for PSO2 day, like the premium user one this week, which is on the 21st to the 23rd. So you do have that as like an extra bonus to try to get some of these better items, or like get some more special scratch tickets. But other than that, I wouldn't really farm this too hard. Moving on, for the AC scratch this week, we have Cyber Comfort. And for those of you who play casts, you finally got some cast parts to work with after who knows how long now. But yeah, there's those 2, and then some Type 1 and Type 2 outfits. So there's this Arbaitner, which is like a turtleneck, but then it's cut off at like the booba, that it's just like a shirt underneath and like overalls that aren't completely on. I don't know what's going on with this outfit. To me, it personally looks weird. I mean, there's a Type 2 one as well that you might like because it is cut off there, but I don't know. I just think it personally just looks goofy, and I wouldn't really use it too much or at all. But for the Type 2, there's this Pianetta outfit. Some people have said it looks pretty similar to something in the past. I'm not sure. But I think it's okay. I mean, just go for it if you want to. But I think the main draw is the motions in here, the Psychic Ball. So there's like the idle for it, which looks like that. And then like the dash and glide, which is just you becoming that Psychic Ball. There's also an idle floating too, which is like okay, but I think the Psychic Ball looks like a lot better. There's also a PR pose 10 that you can grab, a nice little pose. A bunch of portable holograms, the different hairs for like the casts and the Type 2. There's this weapon camo, which is like a rusty weapon. The Elgo Stario, which is for sword, gunblade, and rifle. Personally, I won't grab it, but maybe if you like a rusted look, kind of like the Ritem stuff, then maybe you'll go for that if you use those weapons. But yeah, there's just a whole bunch of other little accessories and makeups and whatnot. A lot of it is like chunky stuff for cast. This is definitely more a cast kind of deal, but there are some extensions for hairs that you may like to use. Maybe you can go with certain things like this ponytail extension. I think would be actually like pretty huge. I just think it looks kind of weird at the bottom there, but I think people would like that, and then like berets and stuff to go with the other outfits. You can check all of that out in game. For something else like a campaign here, we have an AC purchase one, where up until October 3rd, if you buy AC up to 12,000, you can get some different items and a badge. So at 12,000, you get this Legacy Coordination Badge pose. So if you missed out on an SG pose from any of the previous SG scratches, you can grab this and use it on one of those. And there's this Atarika nail tips, which is kind of like whatever. I think this is like a pretty weak one in comparison to what they've had before, but it's still something if you're still buying AC right now. Let's finally go, though, to the balance adjustments. So these were posted today, but they're coming on October 11th, so they're not in the game quite yet. But some of these are pretty significant for certain classes. One of those being the fighter, and with its overload skill, with overload short cycle as well, it'll be reduced cooldown time. So that means you're going to be able to do it faster than before. So right now, it's like a 90-second time if you do have all of these points in, but if it's going to be reduced anything like the other active skills, like with the previous changes, we're going to see a significant change in its cooldown, maybe like 15, 30 seconds. So it's going to be like only a minute instead of 90 seconds you're waiting for the extra 20% potency on Fighter. And Fighter's already pretty crazy with its DPS, so it's just going to be even more so in longer fights. For the next two, for Ranger and Gunner here, and Assault Rifle and Twin Machine Guns, it's pretty much the same exact thing. But it's worded kind of weird. The potency of assault rifles or twin machine guns will be increased when the potency increase is less than the maximum due to distance. So people are kind of confused on what that means. Essentially, if you're not in your optimal range, you're doing less damage normally. But with this change, it's going to be closer to the optimal damage. Still not quite the maximum it could be, but it's going to be closer so it isn't as punishing. So right now, the way it works is if you're in mid-range with a rifle, you get the 1.2 times multiplier. If you're in close range with twin machine guns, you also get that same multiplier. But if you're in the opposite ranges for those weapons, it's just 1.1. If you're at far range for both, it is a 1.0. So if you're too far away, you're just not getting any multiplier to the damage. So if you are in those other ranges that aren't the most optimal, it's actually going to be closer now to this 1.2 instead of it being, a 1.1 or a 1.0. At least that's how I read it. So this is going to be a better change for rifle than twin machine guns, most likely, because rifle has been playing pretty close to enemies because of how the rifle grenade thing works and whatnot. So hopefully this gets closer to the 1.2, like a 1.15 maybe, or even closer than that. So you'll see more DPS out of rifle users. And if you just so happen to be out of range with the twin machine guns, like you're not in close range for whatever reason, then you'll still get a closer amount as well. Ultimately, though, if you have been in like the best optimal range already, it isn't going to help with the damage in those spots. But going back for Force, this is also a huge change for its active skills. The Photon Flare and the Photon Flare's short cycle will get reduced cooldown time, so they're also going to be able to be used more often, so more damage with those. And with the Rod Attack Impact, which was like that recent skill that got added, you get increased potency and relaxed weapon action cancel timing. So just better, overall for Force. For the last one, we have Braver, and all of it is towards that Bow Attack Impact skill, the most recent one that got added for Bow. And with a Brave Combat, with a Bow Combat Finisher, you'll be able to accumulate its gauge now instead of doing nothing at all towards it. And then for the other bow adjustments, all the PAs get increased charge amount for the same gauge. So with all of these now, you're going to be able to get the gauge faster for this skill, which this skill was just the one where once you max it out, your normal attacks for a little bit become more powerful, and after you use them, the first charge PA afterwards will have increased potency of 25% more. So that is actually pretty significant when you're using bow like as a main thing. I don't know how good it is in terms of a hybrid build though if you're using katana and bow. Either way, still a positive for bow and a positive for all the classes mentioned. Yeah, there's actually no nerfs in here. Like the ones with like the ranger and gunner, probably not as significant. Maybe the rifle one can be, pretty good with the close range increase. But yeah, I think the overload is the most significant change because fighter's already crazy with DPS, and be able to get that more often is just going to be, oh my god, it's going to be so nasty. And then I think Forces is also going to be pretty good because that's another potency increase skill, but Force is a little bit lower in terms of like the DPS scaling over, the long period doing speed runs and whatnot. But it's nice to see changes more often instead of like every 6 months because now there seem to be more common like every 2 months now. So maybe we can expect one in December as well. For later this week, we have an NGS headline on the 26th. And this should be more significant than the last one. At least I would hope so. Because this was just a seasonal event month, which they do every other month. And the next month is going to be an actual update. According to the roadmap, it's going to be more in Ritem. So like high rank of probably Alanoth and Makid. And with Makid, I'm kind of hoping that they do some sort of special mechanic to make it more enticing instead of just doing Alanoth all the time. Kind of like what they did with Wrestle Force and adding the Lily Flowers there. Something like that. There will be another dual quest, hopefully like a phase 2, but I'm guessing it's going to be a phase 3 where you probably need phase 3 capsules. But we'll see. It's probably going to be another starless boss of some kind, kind of like Halvadi. There'll be an urgent quest, which is probably the silhouetted enemy right here, which is probably like a starless version of Renus Ritem, like the worm guy. So look forward to that. There will be a Chapter 6 Part 3, which I'm also hoping with that, it isn't just cutscenes like Part 2 was. It better be some actual missions instead of just like, one mission or a couple cutscenes. Like, we need some story content. It looks like Ina's probably going to get some sort of new outfit with this, which kind of leads me to believe it will just be cutscenes, just like the Manon one was, but we'll see about that. With the Creative Space, there'll be an Alliance Space Enhancements. Not quite sure what that is, but some people have been saying it was like the Alliance tree, like in base game. I don't know if they'll do exactly that, but it's probably some sort of special mechanic instead of just like some random thing. But there will be new build parts as well that you can use in creative spaces. And for collabs, there's the sci-fi anime, which is the Spriggan one that they talked about in the last headline. So that'll be happening in October. For the sci-fi toy products, that's going to be in November, but they will be detailing that out in this headline as well, as I say in the description right here, plus info on another upcoming collab. So whatever that is, that's pretty much everything for October. Everything in November is just like a seasonal event, so they probably won't talk about that too much. But October, I don't know how to feel about it until the stuff actually shows up and we see the headline, so I'll let you guys know, and I'll probably post a video on the headline itself some other time. But thank you guys for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.